Let me now bring on board Mr. Y.M. Devasthali, Chairman and Managing Director of L&T Holding Finance. Mr. Devasthali, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Devasthali, are you satisfied with the budget? Has enough attention been paid to infrastructure, or you feel something more could have been done?
Infrastructure is an extremely important sector for the economy. And in the last few years, particularly in the last year, there has been a considerable slowdown in almost all sectors of infrastructure. So it was necessary to make some major announcements for the infrastructure sector. In the budget, some announcements have been made. Some more could have been made. But what has been done is actually to kickstart the sector. For example, roads. In the last year, there was hardly any activity in the road sector. Very few contracts were awarded. On that background, 3,000 kilometers to be awarded in the next 6 months is a good announcement. However, more could be done because there has been considerable slowdown. Construction companies and development companies are suffering today, and they are waiting for activity to commence. So if we can expedite this, it will be better. The second thing is some good announcements have been made for the renewable energy sector. On the power front, thermal power front, we needed two things. One is the coal pricing, blended pricing policy, and we also need to work on joint development of coal sector, in the sense private participation in coal development. And some announcements have been made about PPP in coal development. But I think the pace of both these things, first the blending of blended price and the PPP in coal needs to substantially increase. I think we need to work with speed because this sector is suffering very badly.
Mr. Devasthali, so what is your view on announcements made for the railway sector, and what is your view on the announcement of the regulator in the road sector as well?
There are some good announcements made on railway corridor, and hopefully the activity will pick up very soon. But I think overall it's a mixed bag, I should say. We have to also see this 21,000 crore which have been allocated in the rural development program for roads in the rural areas. We have to see the implementation of such plans, because once we allocate and if we don't spend the money, it has a serious impact not only on that sector, but it has a cascading impact on other sectors such as construction equipment, commercial vehicles, cement, steel, because infrastructure gives fillip to all other industries as well. So when one makes allocation, I think we have to see that the implementation also happens at a fast pace. The announcement made about the road regulator is an extremely welcome announcement, and again, I think that also should be set up immediately, because that is one sector where we don't have a regulator, and therefore there is no real well-defined dispute resolution mechanism. Here there is one entity which awards contracts, and if there is a dispute, we have to go to the same entity. So I think we needed an independent regulator. We also needed to ensure that the pace of dispute resolution increases, because there are lots of things pending with NHAI today. There are a lot of arbitration cases. So I think, and because of which a lot of money of private developers and construction companies is stuck. So hopefully the regulator will become active soon, and we will see vibrancy in the road sector. So overall I think it's a mixed bag. Some welcome announcements, but I think much more is needed.
So Mr. Devasthali, post the budget, which are some of the key sectors where to your mind the recovery could be the fastest and where capex cycle could pick up? I
expect pickup to be visible in road sector. because if they start awarding contracts either through the PPP route or through EPC route, it will give a boost to many other related sectors as well. So I think to begin with, I see some activity picking up definitely in the road sector. Parallelly, I think if they work very actively on coal mining, that is another area where I see activity towards the second half of this year. Apart from that, new power development, unless the coal issue is resolved, coal pricing is resolved, because we are importing a lot of coal. We need domestic coal and imported coal both. Today we are importing more than 100 million tons, and that's an expensive proposition. So I think we have to ensure that the coal development activity gets a fillip, and we start very aggressively on that front. And parallelly, till that happens and the actual production increases, we need to make sure that the blended price mechanism becomes operational. So till that time, we will see very subdued kind of activity in thermal power. Renewable energy, I think we have seen some good growth in the last few years. So that particular sector will continue to do well. So overall, it will be roads, renewable energy, and to some extent railways.
So Mr. Deostali, I mean, do you think that capex cycle would pick up only by monetary easing, or do you also think that it has been impacted due to global factors too?
Well, I think capex cycle does not necessarily only depend on interest rates. That is one element, it's an important element, but that's not the only thing. Because capex depends on demand supply. Capex depends on global situation. Say for example, if you take commodities like steel, copper. Now these are all industries which are global industries. And today the capacity addition is not happening at the pace at which it should because of the global situation. Europe continues to be in trouble. The demand from US is also likely to be somewhat subdued. The only area where there is good demand is Asia. So people are actually watching the situation and not hastily getting into capacity addition. So even if interest rates drop, it is unlikely that the capacity build-up will start immediately. Because the demand supply situation also has to grow. The other important thing is Indian economy also has slowed down. Now we are talking of 5% growth in this year, and next year about maybe 6 and 6.5%. So I think people will have to people are adjusting to this new situation. So therefore, even if the interest rates come down, there will be some increase in capacity. However, it will not be very aggressive. It will happen very gradually.
Mr. Deostali, the infra sector needs about $1 trillion of fresh investment in the 12th five-year plan. Do you think with the current state of economy, we may not see this kind of investment flowing in?
See, $1 trillion is a number which has been there in the market for quite some time. Now, out of this, government expects 50% almost to come from private sector. Now, if that has to happen, then we need a radical change, and that radical change is in our policy framework, the way in which we look at this infrastructure sector, quick decision making, reforms in land acquisition and other areas. Although the bill has been passed, we have to still see how that is going to be implemented, ease of acquiring land. Absolute necessity is the reforms in the debt market. So I think parallelly several things need to happen, and clearances, approvals, environment clearance, before the interest level in this sector from the private side comes up.
So with some of the measures, Mr. Deostali, on infra debt fund, etc., do you see easier and better access for infra financing now?
Yeah, I think one point is very clear. And I think the Finance Ministry has done an excellent job in terms of promoting infrastructure debt fund. The guidelines are very clear. We will see arising out of this interest in infrastructure sector, this also does number of things. It reduces the interest cost for the developer, at least by about 100 basis points or so. Secondly, it gives him elongated tenor. I think this one step, if we focus and work on it, will help in additional funding or also FII interest, long-term pension funds interest, because you have to raise money through bonds for infrastructure debt fund, and these bonds will have long tenor, and if there is a good rating, it will be possible for the IDFs to raise money, and it will help banks to transfer their exposures to these IDFs and create a space for further lending. So I think if this one step becomes successful, it will significantly help funding of infrastructure projects.
Actually, GDP growth for the quarter gone by, which is Q3, came at 4.5%. Do you think India has bottomed out, or do you think the assumptions made in the budget on the GDP growth for FY14 are a little on the optimistic side?
One important point is that the resolve of the government to maintain fiscal discipline is clearly visible. There has been a reduction in subsidies, which has been planned, oil subsidies particularly. 40,000 crore each is expected from these divestments and spectrum, and one has to see how that pans out. Divestment, in my opinion, should be a fairly straightforward thing and relatively easy, but spectrum is something which one has to wait and watch. But finally, at the end of the day, how much control does the government exercise on non-plan or wasteful expenditure is extremely critical, because on the face of it, the target appears to be very stiff, ambitious, but if they really, and I think the finance ministry has demonstrated in the last few months that they are very keen to bring the fiscal situation under control. So if there is a tight control on non-plan wasteful expenditure, and if there is a real emphasis on infrastructure which gives hope or which enables other industries to look up, then we can see a slightly better year ahead, and hopefully maybe around 6.5% kind of a growth should be possible in the year. And I think